Welcome. In this video, we're going to answer one of the most simplest yet profound questions in anatomy. And that question is, what is a nerve? So we're going to, obviously, in medicine and in anatomy, we're going to hear this word a lot. You have nerves doing lots of different things. So it's really, in this video, I just want to give you a really good intuition on what a nerve truly is. So the first thing is, and that's why I have this picture here, is I want to clarify that a nerve is a physical thing, right? So this right here, if you dissect a human body, this whole thing right here is a nerve. So you can hold it, you can feel it, you can touch it. It's a physical entity. It's like a wire almost. Okay, so the way I like to think of a nerve is it's these wires that are running throughout your body, and these wires are going to do certain things. They're going to give you sensory information, they're going to make your muscles move, they're going to do a lot of different things, and we'll talk about exactly what all those functions are. But for now, this might seem very basic and simplistic, but I just really want to clarify that and this is an example of your sciatic nerve, just interestingly, but really a nerve is this physical wire, kind of like a telephone wire or the wire that connects your TV. So it's a wire that communicates information. So let's get rid of this now and talk about what is the specific functions of this wire. So let's get rid of this. And yes, let's switch back to this. All right. So a nerve really, when you're thinking about what is the function of a nerve, you want to first subdivide what is so let me write a nerve. Okay, whoa, that is not neat. Let's rewrite that. Nerve. Okay, so when you think about a nerve, the very first question you want to ask yourself is what is the nerve innervating? So we use this word innervate, and innervate means what is that nerve sticking into? Okay, because it's a physical wire. So when you have a wire, you have to put that wire into something. So the first question you ask yourself is, what is it sticking into? Is it sticking into skin? Okay, because nerves go to skin. Is it sticking into skeletal muscle? So I'm just going to write skeletal muscle. Sorry, let's write this more neatly. Skeletal muscle, skin, and lastly, body wall. And I'm going to clarify what body wall means in a second, but let's just write it down for a while. Body wall. So this is one option, sort of one category of what a nerve can stick itself into. It can stick itself into skin, skeletal muscle, and body wall. The second grouping is you can stick it into smooth muscle. So nerves innervate smooth muscle. So I'm just going to write smooth, M for muscle. You can stick it into cardiac muscle. So that's the muscle in your heart. Okay, and the last thing is you can also have nerves go into glands. So sweat glands, salivary glands are also controlled by nerves. So if a nerve is innervating this category right here, skin, skeletal muscle, and body wall, we call it a somatic nerve. So this is called a somatic nerve. And if it's sticking into this second category over here, that is called a visceral nerve. Okay? So if you're sticking in here, you're somatic, and if you're sticking in here, you are visceral. Now, once you stick yourself into, let's say, skeletal muscle, you can kind of do two things to that muscle, right? You can make that muscle move. So you can give it a motor function. So motor means it's going to move. And the other thing you can do is you can stick yourself into that skeletal muscle and you can pick up some sensory information from that muscle and send it back to the brain. So let me write this all out. Sensory. Right? Let's say there's something irritating that muscle and you could pick up a sensory innervation and send it back to the brain and saying, hey brain, something is wrong with my skeletal muscle. So either you can make that muscle move or you can get some sort of sensory innervation from it. And same with this category, right? You can do the exact same thing to these muscles right here. You can get some sensory from it, or you can make them move, motor. Now you might be thinking, what about skin, right? You can't, so skin really actually does not have a motor function because you can't make skin move. The only reason skin may look like it's moving is because of the skeletal muscle underneath that makes it move. So this is, I'm trying to give you a big picture. Obviously, maybe, you know, skin can't move, but other than that, right, this does fit everything. Glands don't necessarily move, but you can have glands accelerate their function of maybe secreting whatever they're secreting. So that would be a motor function going to a gland, for example. Anyways, so if the nerve is doing so, and this is about it. These are the main functions of a nerve. Now, I want to clarify something before I move on. So I told you, right, a nerve is like a wire. So let's draw it. Let's just pretend this is my wire. Now, I just kind of told you that a nerve can do somatic sensory, somatomotor, visceral sensory, and visceral motor. So which one does it do, right? Does one nerve just do one of these? Does it do two of these? What's the deal? And the answer is it depends on the nerve. So sometimes you'll have a nerve that only does somatic and sensory. Okay, so it might just have just somatic and sensory. Sometimes you'll have a nerve that does somatic sensory and it'll also do somatic plus motor. So it'll do both. It'll do somatomotor and somatic sensory. Sometimes you'll have a nerve that does these two things and it'll also do visceral sensory. So I'm going to add in that one. And some nerves will actually do all four. It'll do all these three things and it'll also have a visceral motor. So you can say that this nerve does all of these functions, or it might only do some of those functions. So when we talk about a nerve, the nerve is a collection of all these things that are inside. So what are these things inside that are doing specifically each of these functions? That's called a nerve fiber, okay? So really, when I wrote the word nerve up here, I really should have written nerve fiber, okay? Because each of these is a specific nerve fiber. You could have somatic sensory nerve fiber, which is the red fiber. I'm sorry, the yellow one. You could have a somatic motor fiber, and that's going to be your red one up here. So fibers make up a nerve, okay? And I think this is a very subtle concept, but very good to understand. So a nerve is a collection of nerve fibers, and that nerve can have one fiber, two fiber, or all the way up to all four of those fiber types. So from now on, I'm not going to keep saying this is a nerve. I'm going to say this is a nerve fiber, this somatic sensory or somatomotor, okay? And same, viscerosensory and visceral motor. These are all specific nerve fibers that can potentially make up a nerve. So anytime you read about a nerve, for example, the sciatic nerve or the vagus nerve, you want to ask yourself, what are the fiber types in that nerve? Because once you know the fiber types in that nerve, you would know what that nerve is actually doing, right? What is all the functions of those nerves? So I just want to clarify, hopefully that makes a little bit of sense, and I just want to do a little bit more terminology. So if you see somatic sensory, you can say that's a somatosensory nerve fiber, or sometimes you'll see it written as general somatic, and then sensory is also known as afferent. So they'll say it's a GSA fiber, which means general just means it's a general fiber found in the body, as opposed to special fiber, which special fibers basically just do a couple things in the body. They do your vision, your sight, basically all the senses. So for the most part, when we say general, it just means it's a general type. It's not doing a sense. So everything is general here. These are all general fibers. It's general, it is somatic, and it is sensory, and we say afferent. What would this be? Well, this is also going to be general. It's also somatic, and motor is going to be efferent. So whenever you see the word efferent, that means it's a motor fiber. So this would be a GSE fiber. Visceral, okay, so this is going to be general. Visceral, sensory. So what is sensory? Sensory is A for afferent. And this is going to be general, visceral, E for efferent, which is motor. So you might see that a specific nerve in the body does GSE and GVA. So then you know, okay, it does somatomotor and visceral sensory. And the last thing I want to clarify is you'll hear this word, so this is sort of your nervous system, and you'll hear this word autonomic nervous system. And autonomic nervous system specifically refers to the visceral motor fibers, the GVEs, because you can imagine, right? What's going to get visceral motor? All these smooth muscle and cardiac muscle and glands in our body, and when we control them, that's where a lot of physiology plays in. So these are arguably some of the most important fiber types, the GVE fiber types. So that's why sometimes you'll hear this word called autonomics. Autonomics. Wow, that is horrible handwriting, but hopefully that makes sense. And autonomics can be further subdivided into sympathetic and parasympathetic. Okay, so sympathetic fibers, generally speaking, increase the motion of things. So they're going to increase your cardiac muscle motion, so that might increase your heart rate. And they're your fight or flight fibers. And parasympathetic is rest and digest. So whenever you need to, digest food or rest, this is where parasympathetics come in. I don't want to go too much into this right now, sympathetic and parasympathetic. My point is, though, this is the takeaway. Whenever you hear, oh, I have a sympathetic fiber or a parasympathetic fiber, that by default means it is a GVE fiber. It is a general visceral motor fiber. It's never going to be in any of these other categories. So just whenever you hear sympathetic or parasympathetic, automatically think GVE or autonomics. And autonomics just means GVE. It's a fancy way of saying GVE. I don't know why we have this, but this used to confuse me a lot. But it's just a fancy way of saying GVE. So as a review, a nerve is a wire, and it's a wire that can contain many different fiber types. And each fiber type does one specific function. It can do somatosensory, somatomotor, visceral sensory, visceral motor. And some of the visceral motor specifically can do sympathetic and parasympathetic functions.